In this video, we are going to learn how to pick up the stitches from a provisional cast on, which is this little yellow crochet chain, and put them back on a needle. And then on a separate video, once I picked up the stitches, I will show you how to do a 3-needle bind off to join this live edge of this headband together with the new live edge that we are just about to create. So without further ado, let's see. I have just put a stopper on the other end of the needle. I will change this out to another needle end at the end. It's just making sure that my live stitches won't run off on the other end. So as I showed you on a separate video when I was doing the actual provisional cast on, this little chain will have 2 ends. This is where I started the chain, so this has the little slip knot here, and then I went all the way around, and then this was the end of it, and I almost ran out of my scrap yarn here. I just did a few more extra stitches at the end. That was mainly to be able to identify which end I'm gonna have to start unraveling. So what we're gonna do first is I'm gonna just untie this little knot where I just pulled the thread through when I finished the chain. Just gently unravel that, and then once it's unraveled, I'll be able to just unzip this. Now I always say that for the provisional cast on, it's best to use a type of wool that's not too fuzzy. So this is just a plain sock yarn. I think it's a 75-25 merino nylon, so it's not too fuzzy like the actual alpaca blend that I'm actually using for this headband, which is a bit more difficult to unravel. But you can also use acrylic yarn or anything that's not gonna be too stuck. So here we are. This is the end of the wool, and this is my contrast colored provisional cast on chain, the yellow. And what we're gonna do now is we are going to pick up the stitches that's being worked into this yellow chain. So those little silver stitches with our needle. Now, you can turn this work any way that is more comfortable for you, whether you do it from the left or the right. It doesn't really matter. You're gonna be pulling the chain 1 stitch at a time so that you unravel the stitches 1 stitch at a time. But the other method of doing the provisional, the unraveling of the provisional cast on, or to pick up the stitches from the cast on, is to actually work into these stitches before you even unravel the chain, and that works too. So here's what you can do. One method is that you use your needle and you go into all these stitches first and unravel the chain after. And all you do is you just pull, and the stitches will be already on the needle, safe and sound. Or you can do this 1 stitch at a time, and you do pick up and pull. Or you can do it the other way, where you pull first and then pick up, but I don't advise that because it's just a recipe for losing your stitches if you do that. So I actually like to do a few stitches at a time. I pick up a few, then I pull them out afterwards. The fuzzier your yarn, the more likely it is that sometimes your stitches will get stuck. And I like to have my threading needle handy so that if it does get stuck, I can just go in there and kind of break those little fuzzy threads. So this is all we're doing. Essentially, you go all the way around and pick up all these stitches, and as you go, you unravel this chain It's a perfect way, and see, I can show you now because that little thread got caught. I just go in there with my needle and just kind of pick at that little tiny thread so I can continue unpicking, unzipping my cast on. You can go as quick or as slow as you're comfortable with. Here we are, and just like I said, have your needle handy. This yarn that I'm working with is rather fuzzy, so it's going to happen that sometimes I get caught. Now, don't worry too much also about which side you're going through, because if your stitches end up being reversed, like the wrong leg of the stitch will be in the front, you can easily just turn them around later on as you go, as you knit into that row. The main thing is that you don't lose any of the stitches. And if in this particular project, all we do after this row is a bind off, but some projects will require you to then start knitting into these stitches and start working the other way, which is completely fine. And what I love about this pattern in particular is that this is a double layer headband. So I've got this Fair Isle pattern on the outside, and I've got the ribbing which will be folded under and then work together with this live edge to create a lining for the headband and to also cover the floats on the back. What I really love about it is that you can decide to turn it into a hat, where this ribbing can just be folded back to create a brim, and you can continue knitting with your main color or with your contrast color, either creating more Fair Isle pattern or just knit it in a plain color and then do some crown decreases and you have a hat, which is really great. Or if you decide to turn it into a cowl, you can repeat the Fair Isle pattern here another time or another 2 times, and you can continue the ribbing for the same length and then fold them together and work them together. This pattern is so versatile, and you can change your mind as you go, because the provisional cast on means that you can continue knitting in any way you want, or you can just go ahead, fold it in half, work them together with a 3 needle bind off, and you have your headband ready. We will do that in the next video. So yeah, this is it. As you can see, this is so simple, as absolutely nothing to it. Try not to lose your stitches. I like to also have a crochet hook handy when I'm doing this. In case I am losing a stitch, you can just quickly pick it up with the help of a crochet hook. Much easier. But this is all it is. If you have done the provisional cast on the way I showed you in the previous video, where you have basically cast on your stitches with help of the crochet hook directly onto your knitting needle, then you are definitely in the right little hoop or bump of the cast on chain. If you have worked the provisional cast on another way, where you will crochet a chain first and then pick up the stitches into the chain, it could happen that you accidentally cast on your stitches into the wrong part of this chain, and then this unzipping won't be this simple. That happened to me when I first learned how to do provisional cast on, that I wasn't entirely sure which part of the crochet chain the stitches go into, and I've done them in the wrong way. I've put my stitches in one of these little legs of this V stitches instead of the pearl bumps, which is in the back. And when that happens, you won't be able to unzip your provisional cast on. It's all a learning curve. But then I have discovered that the provisional cast on can be done in one step, where you are casting on directly onto your needle, and that will ensure that your cast on sits where it should sit, and your unraveling will be an absolute breeze, even if you're using a fuzzy yarn that I do now. and sometimes you will need to enlist the help of your tiny needle to unpick the stuck little fibers. But as you can see, it's so quick, so simple. And when we got to the end of the row, we will have our stitches on the needle. Now, when I go around the entire row, I'm gonna have this needle sitting the same way as this. I have the two needles sticking out on this side, and that's exactly what we want. So I'll come back in the next video. I'll show you how I have both needles with live stitches on them, and I will show you how to do the 3 needle bind off purlwise, which will then in turn create the same purl row that we have here, which is perfect for folding it in half, and it's going to create a beautiful, very neat edge.